Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm Nur Iwanina Izzati binti Haji Jamri, 22B0812, and my partner Nurul Ashikah binti Ja'far, 22B0828. We're gonna talk about Istishab and its role in Ijtihad of Hukm in Syariah. Here are the list of contents under Istishab. Firstly, we will explain briefly the meaning of Istishab. Second, the Hukm. Third, its legal validity. Fourth, arguments of scholars. Fifth, the principle of Istishab. Sixth, role of Istishab. And lastly, conclusion. Literal meaning of Istishab is escorting, continuous companionship, friendship or keep abreast claim, while general meaning of Istishab is it refers to the idea that something from the past or the present must be taken to signify that it will remain that way in the future. Technically, Istishab is a logical demonstration that may be used in the absence of other signals, particularly facts or legal or philosophical principles whose existence or non-existence had been established in the past and are supposed to remain such as of yet without evidence to establish any change. Here is an example for Istishab. If A buys a hunting dog from B with the understanding that it has been trained to hunt, but A later asserts that the dog is untrained, unless there is proof to the contrary, A's claim will be recognized under Istishab. Hukm according to Imam Shafi'i accepts Istishab as a secondary source of Hukm and consider it to be proof until it is contradicted. Imam Malik considered it to be proof until it is contradicted, while Imam Hanafi refused to consider it as an evidence. Legal validity. According to Al-Karafi, he has different opinions of Istishab from Hanafis. He mentioned that the evidence that it is a proof is that it is probable that an existing state will continue to exist until there is something to negate it, such as probability is evidence in action. If it were ignored or not acted upon, rights would be lost since there would be no means to establish them. There are three arguments of Istishab. First arguments. The opinion of the majority of Malikis, Shafi'is, Hanbali school, and small part of Hanafis. From Surah Al-An'am, verse 145 also mentioned about foods that are forbidden to consume, but who are in need or exceeding immediate need. Surely Allah SWT will forgive. He is the most forgiving and the most merciful. They also mentioned that arguments are only based on ijma. Second argument, most contemporary scholars of the Hanafis determine Istishab as an argument for rejection, not the nature of the designation of a new law. It is an argument to defend the rights of the existing and not to be an argument to admit that the new rights which rejected due to law arising from stipulation to the contrary with an existing resolution. Third argument, the opinion of the majority of the Hanafi jurists and some of the scholars of Al-Kalam. According to most scholars mutakallimin, they deny al-Istishab as an absolute argument. This is because they argue that there is a specific law in the past are not necessarily the existence of the eternal law in the future.
Next is principle of Istishab. So there are four principles of Istishab. The first one is the original hukum. The second one is the origin of the things is permitted. The third one is original clearance, and the last one is certainty is not removed by doubt. So we are moving on to the first principle, which is the original hukum. This means the original ruling of something is constant or stay the same to what it is before. It is all about what is permitted and what is prohibited, which is halal and haram. This principle is also known as Istishab al-Hukum. All things that we do or that benefit humans, including laws, contract, and the trade of goods and services, are considered as permitted until there is dalil or evidence that prove to be prohibited. For example, when missing person is unclear whether he or she is alive or not, they are assumed to be alive until there is proof that the person is dead. Next, the second principle is origin of the things is permitted. From the Arabic word aslupi ash-shay'a al-ibaha. From the word ibaha itself means harus. This means that all things are considered as harus at first, when there is no hukum stated in the primary sources. It is assumed that everything is allowed under Syariah until it is specifically forbidden. This principle is also known as al-ibaha al-ashliyah. For example, a person is breaking the law when they smoke and then defend their behavior by claiming that the original rule for something was necessary, which is harus. The generality of this rule does not imply its lack of application. As was said above, smoking cigarettes has its own defense that claims that something is necessary, which is harus, unless there is proof to the contrary. This means that smoking has its own dalil or evidence that prove it is prohibited, such as smoking can damages body part. Next, original clearance, which is the third principle of Istishab. The principles indicates that unless the contrary is proved, there is a freedom from obligations. This is known as Istishab al-Bar'ah al-Ashliyah. In other words, the absence of taklif, obligation, and rights that shouldn't be placed on a person at all are based on the existence of obligations unless there is a valid cause to do so. For example, A states that B owes him $50, but B denies it. It might be questioned if this situation allows for a settlement following a denial. According to Shafi'i, settlement after refusal is not permitted because he believed that since B denied the claim prior to the settlement, he is free from the liability unless there is a third person, which is the evidence that shows B owes $50 from A, while Hanafi argued that B's continued non-liability following the claim is not unassailable. This means B should settle his debt first so that he can be free from liability. The last principle is that certainty is not removed by doubt, as we can see from the Arabic word al-yakin la yazul bi-shak. The word al-yakin itself means confident, while the word shak means doubt. This means the presumption remains as it was until there is proof that changes are justified. It is known as istishab al-wasf. For example, when a person is certain that he is in an ablution but isn't sure if he is pure or impure until there is certainty that they are not ritually clean, they are assumed to be in this condition. This statement means when someone is unsure whether his or her ablution is pure, they are assumed to be pure unless there is evidence that proves it is impure. Next, Istishab role in Ijtihad. One of the role is it is one of the sources of Islamic jurisprudence. It considered as secondary sources. It apply only if there is no evidence available. If it conflicts with another proof, the other proof takes precedence. Therefore, in conclusion, istishab is not an independent proof or a method of juristic deduction in its own right, but mainly functions as a means of implementing an existing indication, which is dalil. Istishab is applicable either in the absence of other proof or as a means of establishing the relevance of the existing proof.
Thank you
That's
for
all from
listening.
us.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you for listening.